Carolina, and then 48 hours later, you had Super Tuesday, and things are going to be happening furious and fast, and we got to gear up for an entirely different race than what you've seen before. The tenor it has changed in this race. The ground has shifted. Strategic imperatives are now different. We're entering a different time, and it's a very compressed and short time that we're in this time frame. So people had better get real. These campaigns better stay up late. They better be thinking about how they're going to put forward what they're about, how they're going to deal with the debate, how they're going to allocate scarce media resources. And some people are just not going to make it for very long, and that's just the nature of presidential politics. So we got a lot of news here coming up next week. I promise you, a lot.
James, you just mentioned the risk. Define risk in your view, and talk about down ballot races under a Sanders nominee.
Right. Well, first of all, I won't mention names, that I get any number of calls from panicked congressional incumbents. I know what's happening out there. I got a real good idea. The entire theory that by expanding the electorate, increasing turnouts, you can win an election is the equivalent of climate denying. All right? When people say that, they're as stupid to a political scientist as a climate denier is to an atmospheric scientist. So whatever you do, if you want to vote for Bernie Sanders because you feel good about his program, because you don't like the banks on Wall Street, or you don't like pharmaceuticals, that's completely legitimate. I understand that. If you're voting for him because you think he'll win the election, because he'll galvanize heretofore sleepy parts of the electorate, then politically you're a fool. And that's just a fact.
You're just saying this, again, by citing absolutely
political science.
No evidence here, and just saying, there's so much political science of Bernie Sanders that proves Bernie Sanders is not going to be able to win the election. I'd say there's a good bit of political science in history that proves that in a society that's deeply unequal and uneven along class levels, when someone comes in and actually calls that out and exploits that, that person ends up doing very, very well. So I think that's really what Bernie Sanders is trying to push on, and successfully pushing on right here at this moment. So. And I mean, you're looking at people like Elizabeth Warren now, like they're getting it's insane how desperate they're getting. Like, it's really strange to see the sense of all these legitimate obstacles that have been put up to try and stop Bernie Sanders to get the nomination just absolutely crumble before one's eyes. Like we saw Elizabeth Warren even today, or recently, bowed to taking super PAC money. I was like, you're really just giving the whole game away here at this point. That was kind of my reaction to it, but. What do you think about that? Elizabeth Warren deciding she was going to not disavow the support of a super PAC.
Oh, I'm not shocked at all. Actually, I was talking to you about how she had mentioned that she would do it to level the playing field, quote unquote. But actually, she was talking about doing that if she were to become the nominee. And she would be perfectly fine, as she put it in an MSNBC interview, with taking super PAC money in the general election. Now, for me, campaign finance reform is probably a fourth important issue. For me, I think that if we definitely actually got through with it and we did it, I think that would really change the way our elections go through. But I think that it is really quite interesting that Warren is actually having to go that low to break all of her previous promises that she wouldn't take it. I mean, she promised it that she started her campaign. She promised she wouldn't do it. I think she signed an agreement as well not to take any super PAC money. But she is very desperate, and the reason why she's desperate is because she is losing support. And she is losing support actually quite fast. It seems as if it's going really mostly to Sanders, which is what most people had agreed upon, that if Warren were to drop out, a lot of her support would go on to Sanders. But I think that Warren really wants to make her case. She wants to be president. I mean, she wants to be known as the person who really, it seems as if that she's trying to brand herself as the consumer protector, because she made the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. But the fact of the matter is, you look at her record, and it's subpar amongst a consumer finance and a consumer protection outlook. I mean, the fact that Warren is at least back then, was more conservative and now is acting as if she's very liberal, but she's running a campaign as if she's a moderate. But then when she's on the debate stage, she tries to act all liberal. It's very confusing how she runs her campaign, to be quite frank with you, because it's like, she's like all about, on the campaign trail, she doesn't talk about Medicare for all. She doesn't talk about her Green New Deal that she supposedly supports or any of this other progressive stuff that she supposedly supports. She's instead talking about how she thinks that certain forms of capitalism are probably good, and there are definitely certain forms that need revisions. I mean, she's trying to, on the campaign trail, she's trying to cater to the moderate voters, while on the debate stage, which is watched by many, cater to the more progressive field. Which, does that campaign style work? I mean, it isn't proven to work, but I could see where she's coming from. I would never run on it because, again, you're open to targets, and it's open, really very susceptible to not really doing so good. And as we see with Warren, that's exactly what the case was, is that now her main block wasn't the moderates, it was actually the progressives. And all of her main block of the progressives are actually running over to Bernie, and now she's trying to act all progressive. But I think that she's really just on her last leg here. I mean, she should probably be dropping out pretty soon. Same with Bloomberg, and same with Klobuchar. With person, yes, I support Klobuchar, but to be honest with you, I think that those three, they got to drop out pretty soon because they got no shot. So,
yeah, I mean, there's really just clip after clip coming out of this. It's just absolutely incredible to see. And it's really weird because all these obstacles that we felt kind of as Bernie Sanders supporters just melting away before the eyes of everyone here. This is, again, Chris Matthews on MSNBC in a different time.
Certainly going on in California, where the largest state and probably the most robust Democratic state, that's been going on since Iowa caucus day. They've been voting out there. Look, I think this is going to be very frustrating for pundits, very frustrating for media consultants and everyone who's trying to figure this out logically. Bernie Sanders is walking away with it. He's doing it now. He's probably going to win his third contest today, big time. As John Ralston, maybe 2-1. There's questions about whether the other candidates will even get on the scoreboard by passing the threshold of 15. And what seems to be going on is Bernie and Buttigieg did well in the first two contests. They'll do well again today. But the voters are not playing the game any better than the candidates are. Everybody knows the issue now is going to be Bernie versus some alternative. Not necessarily a moderate. It could be Elizabeth Warren. But there has to be some alternative, or we're not going to have a real contest here. Bernie's going to walk away with it. The whole thing, all the way to Milwaukee. So how do you get an alternative? We watched the debate the other night. The candidates did not participate. They did not want to pick an alternative. They wanted to attack, threatening them. That was Mike Bloomberg. They did not attack Bernie. They did not play the role of trying to figure out who's going to be the best alternative. So they didn't play the game. And now the voters out here and the caucus goers, they're not playing the game either. They don't want to play the game of picking an alternative. It seems to me that that's what's so frustrating. They're fighting among themselves. Buttigieg, who may well be down in the pack, 5th or 6th, he could well win second place out here today and confuse all the pundits again. So it could be Bernie and Buttigieg once again owning the first two places. This could well happen again, and we'll be going into the Sunday newspapers and the Sunday shows tomorrow. Once again, frustrated. We will not have an alternative, and we'll have to wait till Wednesday to see if Mike Bloomberg has got his act together on the NDAs or not, and he probably won't. So this is going to be a very frustrating fight.
Yeah, and the word used time and time again is just by Chris Matthews here about a possible alternative to Bernie. It's frustrating. It's like they are running up against a wall and not getting past it, which is really, really incredible to see. And it's like it's so amazing. Like, you feel like this is something they could have very easily stopped. You know what I'm saying? Like, they could have stopped this. They could have got in front of this very, very easily if they had just had the sense to kind of see that it was coming. James, what's your final thoughts on just that quickly and where the race is going from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at how the race is going to be playing out for the future, I think we have a really long road ahead. I think that it's going to be quite interesting to see exactly what occurs in this race. I think that Bernie is really showing to many people that he has a really fired up base behind him. And, do I think he could be Trump? You know what? I think he honestly could be Trump. I think it's the question of how the party is going to react if he becomes the nominee, because I think that honestly might have a big effect as to how he may become the nominee if he were to become the nominee. And I think that if in the circumstance that we have a gridlocked problem towards the convention, then I think that we should really consider continuing and just looking at the votes rather than having a superdelegate play. I mean, honestly, I gotta look more at how the Republican Party does it. Yeah, I gotta look more how the Republican Party does it, because the fact of the matter is they don't have superdelegates. I mean, I believe they just do a delegate system, which is honestly what makes a lot more sense than having superdelegates, because superdelegates are going to be obviously mostly biased towards the more establishment backed candidate, which honestly is going to be interesting to see who exactly is the establishment backed candidate, because it's going to either be Bloomberg, Biden, Buttigieg, or possibly Klobuchar, but probably not. I probably most likely Biden would be the backed one from the establishment, but it's really weird. It's going to be a really weird instance if we actually have to have a gridlocked party at the convention, because I mean, I think that really what's going to have to play out here is the votes are going to have to really decide instead of the superdelegates, in my opinion. I mean, I think that's really across the board what should always occur here, instead of having the superdelegates decide what occurs in the race, because it's going to be obviously biased. But I think that what we're going to have to also see here on Super Tuesday is how each candidate does, because Super Tuesday, I think, is really going to have to be the finish line for the candidates who are not doing good now. Obviously, they probably won't take my advice and send them know me, or obviously, they're probably going to say, "Well, I could probably do better next time." That's what they always say. They think they could use their magic dust and just do better next time. But I think Super Tuesday is going to have to be the finish line for them, so that we can actually have a real primary between 2 or maybe even 3 candidates. So that
who
we
do
can
you think?
actually
Who
have,
do you think that second candidate to face Bernie? Who do you think that's going to be?
So far, it's going to either be Buttigieg or Biden, because Buttigieg is right now in second place on the delegate count. So Buttigieg is probably going to say, well, I could probably do good. Now, will he do good against Bernie? No, he won't. The only guy who probably would do good against Bernie is probably someone like Biden, who at least has some minority support, unlike Buttigieg, who has, the bottom of barely nothing, of barely anything.
I just don't see
and
who
I
could
think
it be. I really don't see who it could be. I mean, like, each person has something that really counts them out. I mean,
Biden has something that's counting him out now, is that he's not really doing as good as people predicted him. He was going to do. I mean, he's not even doing good in really states that are majority white. Like, he didn't do great in Iowa. He didn't do great in New Hampshire. He did pretty good tonight in Nevada, but that's a minority. It's not majority minority, but it has a good minority block of voters, mostly Hispanic, voting in that state. But the fact of the matter is that Biden does well in only minority states. Well, that may
really
seem
only
good.
Majority of
really
African American states.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the only state he's actually going to win. But I mean, he did pretty good tonight. I mean, he got second place, which is better than what he did in the 2 previous states. I mean, I think he got 4th in Iowa, which is pretty bad, actually. I mean, because usually someone like Biden, a moderate, is supposed to do good in a state like Iowa, but Buttigieg really did good in Iowa. I mean, I think he was just hammering in Iowa, to be quite frank with you. And also that voter block really kind of goes with a Bernie or Buttigieg type crowd, because Buttigieg is more of the conservative Democrat, and then you have Sanders, who was more of the progressive candidate in this race. So pretty big polar opposites, I would say. So those are definitely the 2 candidates who I would argue Iowa voters definitely would go for, whereas Biden is a little bit more left than Buttigieg is, but definitely more right than Sanders is when it comes to the race.
All right, James Stanley, thank you so much today. We'll let you go. It is getting very late, but really appreciate you coming, and hope to have you back on soon for the rest of the primary. Oh yeah,
I'll definitely be on probably for our next one, which got next Saturday.
Next Saturday,
down in South Carolina. We're going to see what's going on down there. But yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much. That's James Stanley with us once again for South Carolina. I do want to end today on the a nice video from culinary workers. And really, I don't know if you remember, you maybe have heard this or not, but I highly recommend checking out the Daily Podcast. I never recommend checking out the Daily Podcast on this podcast.